hollow between the pines. Rain had stopped hours ago, but the forest still exhaled water. Every branch, every fern, every inch of moss seemed to be slowly wringing itself out. Claire switched off the headlamps of their rented Land Rover the moment the dirt track became too narrow for comfort. The sudden dark was violent. "You sure this is the right turn?" she asked, voice low, as though something outside might overhear. Tom didn't answer right away. He was staring at the paper map spread across the dashboard, useless now that the phone signal had died 20 minutes earlier. Finally he tapped a faint pencil line. If the ranger was telling the truth, yes. They had come looking for silence. 34 and 37, married 9 years, no children, no plans for children, just two people who had begun to suspect that the quiet they craved might already live inside them like a low-grade fever. The Black Hollow Forest in western Wales had been described online, in the few threads that still existed, as the place sound goes to disappear. Neither of them had expected the description to be quite so literal. They locked the car and started walking. The path was barely a suggestion, more a narrow channel where the bracken had been trampled just enough times to stay down. Their boots made wet sucking noises. After 15 minutes the trees changed. The oaks and birches gave way to pines so tall and straight they looked drawn with a ruler. The air grew colder, not gradually, but in a single step, as though someone had opened a freezer door directly in front of them. Claire stopped. "Did you hear that?" Tom tilted his head. "Nothing but the soft drip drip from needles. I thought someone whispered my name." He gave her the look he always gave when she mentioned things he couldn't immediately explain. Patient, a little tired, faintly amused. "It's the wind moving through the hollow trunks. They make all kinds of sounds." She nodded, but her hand stayed on his sleeve longer than necessary. They walked another half hour. The path disappeared entirely. They navigated by feel and by the memory of a small compass Tom kept checking every few minutes. The needle spun lazily, refusing to settle. Then the first impossible thing happened. A child laughed. Not close. Not far. The sound arrived from everywhere at once, as though the forest itself had briefly giggled. High, delighted, perfectly ordinary and completely wrong. Claire froze. Tom turned in a slow circle, beam of his flashlight cutting pale tunnels through the mist. "Hello," he called, more out of reflex than hope. No answer. Only the drip drip and their own breathing. They moved faster after that. Around 11:30 they found the clearing. It wasn't natural. The pines stood in a perfect ring, trunks so evenly spaced it looked planned. In the center sat a low stone plinth no taller than a coffee table. On it lay a single object. A woman's black leather glove, palm up, finger slightly curled as though still remembering the shape of a hand. Claire stepped forward before Tom could stop her. "Don't touch it," he said. "I'm not." She crouched, studying it. "It's dry. Everything else is soaked." "How is it dry?" Tom didn't like the question. He didn't like that he had no answer. They were about to leave the clearing when the second impossible thing happened. The glove moved. Not much. Just the index finger flexed once, slowly, deliberately, like someone testing whether the hand still worked. Claire made a small strangled sound and stumbled back into Tom's chest. He wrapped both arms around her without thinking. "We're leaving," he said. "Right now." They turned. The path they had come in on was gone. In its place stood a wall of pine trunks, shoulder to shoulder, no gaps wider than a fist. Behind them the same thing had happened. The clearing was sealed. Tom swung the flashlight in wide arcs. The beam caught pale faces between the trees, dozens of them watching. Not people exactly. More like impressions of people. Features blurred, eyes too large, mouths open in silent laughter or silent screaming. It was impossible to tell which. Claire pressed her face against his shoulder. "They're not real," she whispered, more to herself than to him. "They can't be real." "They're not," Tom agreed, even though every nerve in his body screamed otherwise. He pulled the compass out again. The needle was still spinning. Then the child laughed once more, this time directly behind them. They spun. Nothing. But the glove on the plinth was now pointing. One stiff leather finger aimed straight at the far side of the clearing, toward a single gap that had not been there 30 seconds earlier. Tom felt Claire's heart beat against his ribs, frantic and shallow. "We don't go that way," she said. "We don't have a choice." They walked. The new path was narrower, the ground softer, almost spongy. Their boots sank deeper with every step. The trees leaned inward, branches knitting together overhead until the sky was only a rumor of charcoal gray. After 10 minutes the laughter stopped. In its place came whispering. Not words at first, just sibilant breath moving through the needles. Then fragments. Should have stayed home, promised you'd never leave me. Look what you made me do. Claire started crying quietly. Tom kept his arm around her shoulders, flashlight shaking in his other hand. The voices grew clearer, more personal. A woman's voice, Claire's timbre, but older, cracked with grief, said quite distinctly, "You were supposed to come back for me." Tom felt Claire flinch as though slapped. "That's not me," she whispered. "That's not my voice." "I know." But the next voice was worse. It was his own. Low, calm, reasonable, the exact tone he used when he was trying to talk her down from panic. "You always wanted quiet, Claire. You said so. You said you wanted to disappear. Well, here we are." He stopped walking. The flashlight beam trembled across roots and moss and then landed on something that made his stomach fold in on itself. A man stood 20 paces ahead. Same height, same coat, same slightly stooped posture Tom had developed after too many years at a drafting table. The face was his face except the eyes were entirely black, no whites, no reflection. The double raised one hand in a small wave. Then it turned and walked away down the path and hurried. Claire gripped Tom's wrist so hard her nails broke skin. "Don't follow it," she breathed. "I wasn't going to." But the path had already changed again. The way back was blocked once more. The only direction left was forward after the thing wearing his skin. They followed. Not because they wanted to. Because the forest gave them no other option. The whispering grew into overlapping conversation, snatches of arguments they'd had years ago, apologies they'd never spoken aloud, promises neither remembered making. The voices braided together until it sounded like a choir singing in reverse. Eventually the path opened into another clearing, smaller. In the center stood two figures. One was Claire but not Claire. This version wore the clothes she had on right now, down to the tear in the left knee of her jeans. Her head was tilted at an unnatural angle, neck broken but not quite snapped. She smiled with too many teeth. Beside her stood Tom's double. He held the black glove in one hand like a trophy. Neither moved. The real Claire made a sound Tom had never heard from her before, half sob, half animal keening. The fake Claire spoke first. "You left me here once," she said pleasantly. "Do you remember? You said you'd come back. You never did." "That's not true," Claire whispered. "Oh, but it is." The broken-necked woman took a step closer, head lolling. "You left pieces of yourself here every time you said you wanted to disappear. Little pieces. They've been waiting." Tom stepped in front of his wife. "Stop talking." The double smiled his smile, but stretched wider. "You don't get to tell us what to do anymore, Tom. You lost that right when you stopped listening to her." He lifted the glove. Inside it, something moved, something with too many knuckles. Claire suddenly laughed. A cracked, terrified sound. "They're us," she said. "They're what we become if we keep pretending everything's fine." Tom looked at her. Really looked. She was shaking, pale, eyes huge, but she was still Claire. Still the woman who hated horror movies but watched them anyway because he liked them. Still the woman who kept his favorite mug on the top shelf even though she couldn't reach it herself. Still real. He turned back to the doubles. "We're leaving," he said. Not loud. Not angry. Just certain. The fake Claire cocked her ruined head. "You can't. You already belong here." "No," Tom said. "We don't." He took Claire's hand. Her fingers were ice cold, but they closed around his immediately. They walked straight toward the doubles. Neither figure moved to block them. At the last second the fake Tom reached out with the gloved hand. Tom didn't flinch. He simply walked past, pulling Claire with him. The moment they crossed the invisible line the whispering ceased. The air changed. The cold lifted like a curtain being drawn back. Behind them the clearing was empty. No plinth. No glove. No doubles. Just pine needles and darkness. They kept walking. Neither spoke for a long time. Eventually they saw headlights faint, far away. Their own car, somehow, impossibly, parked exactly where they'd left it. They didn't question it. They got in. Tom started the engine. Claire turned the heat on full. Neither looked in the rearview mirror. As they drove away the forest stayed silent behind them. But Claire kept the passenger window cracked half an inch the whole way back to the main road. Just in case something still wanted to whisper her name. End.